I'm really excited today for my first guest, or one of my guests here today. He's a professional choreographer and dancer, and the choreographer and director of AsiaSF out in San Francisco, and the brand new AsiaSF Palm Springs in Palm Springs. And he's currently in Palm Springs right now. We tried to do this interview the other day, but it was much better to do it here in Palm Springs. Ronnie Reddick, welcome to TAGS Podcast. Thanks for doing the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be back.
Absolutely, absolutely. You look fabulous. And as I was saying offline, you're giving a little bit of Lenny Kravitz, and I'm going with it. So this episode, and what I'm doing with all my interviews right now is talking about race and sexuality. It's Gay Pride Month. Happy Pride to begin with.
Happy Juneteenth. All of that.
Happy Juneteenth. Yeah. That, I don't know that all of us really understood what that actually meant. And I'm so glad that given everything that's going on, Black Lives Matters, that we're all of us are understanding what that pivotal moment really meant. And it was the end of slavery, correct?
Yeah. The freedom of people.
Yeah. In Mexican culture, we oftentimes we celebrate Cinco de Mayo, and oftentimes people are a little bit confused because people in Mexico are like, they don't really understand it, but it really was a pivotal turning point in the Spanish War that was a turning point when finally there was a turning point for Mexicans. And so that's why we celebrate that too. And I love that this is coming out. I think education is everything. I really wanted to get into this really quickly with you because as a professional choreographer and dancer, and we're going to get into all of your work in a second here, but one of the things I wanted to ask you was, as a dancer, when you were first going out for castings as a dancer, did you experience ever any sort of racial bias, racial discrimination based on the color of your skin, and how did that make you feel?
I did actually, and I always tell the one story that happened. I did a casting for Macy's many years ago, and it was for a Levi's thing. It was a live show, and they auditioned dancers, and they were going to put us all in Levi's and do this whole live show. And I know I did well. I probably outdanced almost at least half the dancers in the room. I know I did, because it was just one of those moments where you do a good audition, everything's perfect, and all my friends and all my colleagues that were with me all got chosen, and they were all either light-skinned, very, very light-skinned, or white. And I went to the choreographer, I won't mention names, but I went to her afterwards and I said, like, what can I do? I thought maybe, how can I improve myself? What can I do to be better? Did I do something wrong?
How old are you at this time frame? Just to give us a reference point.
I want to say I was early or mid to late 20s.
Okay.
Because I didn't start dancing until I was like 25. So I was 25, 26 when I started dancing. So everything happened really quickly. And 2 years later, I was working professional. Everything happened really quick. But yeah, so I went to her and I asked her, I said, so what could I do better to be better next time, And she took a pause, and there was a long pause. And I thought that was kind of strange. And then she looked at me and she goes, well, Macy's doesn't hire dark-skinned blacks. And I was kind of taken aback because I grew up in San Francisco, so there wasn't a lot of obvious racism. So I didn't really see it. I didn't grow up with it. So that was the first time in my head I was like, what do you mean by that? Like I know I'm brown skinned, but my color had never mattered before. So I didn't really understand it. And I left the casting kind of puzzled. But then 2 days later, I get a call from my agent, and she said, you've been booked for the Levi's campaign. You're the face of Levi for this campaign, and they're doing a big production, at the end of the week. So I was like, but I was just told that they didn't hire, brown-skinned people. Like, everybody was light skinned, and I thought,
So what you're telling us is you ended up getting casted anyways.
I ended up getting casted anyway. Not only I didn't have to do the live show. I'm sure I was paid a lot more because I ended up going into the studio shooting film that was shown on the wall behind the live show. So it was my face and my body dancing while the live show was going on. It was my face and my body that was being featured behind them on the big screen.
Oh, I see.
I was the actual feature.
Wow.
So it ended up being her. It was all her thing, not Macy's. It wasn't Levi's. It wasn't Macy's. It was the actual choreographer. And that's when I realized that she discriminated against me because of my skin color. And I thought, but that was the only time that I've ever experienced something that blatant, like in my face, where somebody told me, "You're too dark."
What's interesting, and I'm jumping around and it just came to my head, it's not even in my notes, is you and I have had a long history with our dear, dear friend, producer, director extraordinaire, owner of AsiaSF, Larry Hashbarger, with Macy's and Macy's Passport. And I distinctly remember when I was and my sister shooting a behind the scenes special, kind of almost in the early stages of reality TV. We were kind of behind the scenes and you were choreographing back then, I remember. And did you even make that connection of how now you're on the other side of it working, and what did that mean for you to now be, I don't know if you were part of the casting process, but you were definitely a part of creating the whole movement of what Passport was at that moment when I'm talking about.
The Macy's segments that I choreographed, I actually, when there were featured dancers, I did the casting for those dancers. The models were already in the show, so I didn't have any say in what models I used. I just used whatever models they gave me. But no, I've never, ever, working in the Bay Area, experienced that sort of blatant racism again. That was my first and only time. And because of that, it hasn't stayed with me. Like, I don't go in with this assumption someone's gonna look at my skin color and judge me. I don't do that. I wasn't raised like that. I know a lot of people, we talk about the N-word. And those things don't have power with me because I didn't grow up like that. So I didn't get called that. If I did get called it, I didn't understand the word, so it didn't mean anything. And I understand what people mean when they say it, but we give those words power by letting them affect us. Otherwise, one ear and out the other, it doesn't affect me. And I've been called that as an adult, years later. I mean, just randomly, people will say that word, but it doesn't have power for me. And I know a lot of my friends get very offended and want to fight and want to, like, what you, it doesn't, because I know I'm not that. So I guess it never affected me like that. So
one thing we need to definitely address, and I didn't think about it the last time when we tried to do this interview, is that the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, where I grew up as well. I live in New York now, but there is so much of what you're talking about, I think, that I do feel in many ways, and there's definitely critiques on the Bay Area. We could go on and on. Yeah. But one of the things that I definitely did learn a lot was inclusion and a lot less. Do you credit growing up in the Bay Area for a lot of your mentality on what you just expressed?
I do. I mean, we have a really lucky, we're very blessed in San Francisco, I think, because I travel all around the world and I've worked, and I always want to go home. I always want to go back to San Francisco. I don't care how good of a time I'm having. I could be on an island in the Caribbean and sitting out in Hawaii or in Japan, or I lived in Korea for a little bit on tour with an artist. I always want to go back to San Francisco. There's just a comfort there. I always tell people you can always find a community in San Francisco that you can relate to. So you can just be yourself. You don't have to kind of, like when I'm in Miami, I feel like if you don't fit in with a group, or if you don't speak Spanish, or you don't do this, or you're out. You're not part of this. You feel very alienated. And New York can be the same thing. You know,
Yeah.
it's a bubble. If you don't have a community of people that you know,
Yeah.
you're on the out. But San Francisco's not like that. You could be sitting somewhere and people will come up and go, "Hey, you by yourself? You know, you want to? We gotta." It's just really easy. And I know it's changed since you and I were growing up.
Yeah.
People are coming from other places now. So with tech being so big, it's not the same city. But back then, it was gay, straight, black, white. It was comfortable. You know, we went to school with everybody. Everybody kind of got along. There wasn't a lot of segregation or separations. And, you know, there wasn't a black and white, Asian, black, Mexican. It wasn't that. It was just us. We were just there doing our thing. So I credit the city for that. San Francisco did a good job, I think, in raising some of us. So.
Well, I definitely want to get into casting for AsiaSF, the ladies of Asia, the trans community, your work with the trans community in just a second. But I know personally offline, you and I have talked. We had a call a couple weeks ago where we were just sharing our stories. And one of the things that you and I were sharing was when in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, when you and I were hanging out, going to places like the Box, you did share with me offline that you did feel when you were going out in the gay community an otherness. And then correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt like what you were stating was if you were to go to some of the bigger clubs at the time, whether it be Universe or I'm forgetting some of the big ones, but you could be
Club Universe. The Oasis used to do a big party.
Yes.
There was DVA, End Up, you know.
Oh yeah. 1015 Folsom, of course.
Yeah, back in the day, there was Trocadero, there was the Palladium, you know, I mean, we had some cool spots, but but no, I understand where you're going, and I did, in the gay community specifically, I did feel very invisible because I wasn't a body. I was this very lean dancer bod, you know, African-American kid who dressed to the nine. I was always decked out.
Honey, I know.
But I wasn't naked. You know, I wasn't in a G-string or just booty shorts and a chain link harness and, you know, but I would wear collars and I would do hats and I was a dancer. So, I mean, I'm kicking to my head and triple spins on a box and hitting walls and all these accents. And I mean, I was working it out, but I didn't learn till later. I had a few people come up to me and, you know, they would always say, "You're amazing." And I would be like, "Well, I don't get tipped like the other guys." They're like, "Because you are the real deal." They would be like, "You are dancing." You know, we tip them because we know why they up there, you know, but, you know, they would say they would watch me and they were impressed with just the quality of my talent. And so I realized, well, maybe that's why people were intimidated to come up and tip me, is because I was, but when I'd come off the box, I'd stand there at the bar just chilling. I don't even drink, but I would stand there having a ginger ale or a soda, and nobody would speak to me. Nobody would come up to me. I wasn't approached. So, you know, you feel invisible. You feel like, God, you know, I guess I'm not as good looking as some of these other guys, but I always blamed it on my body. I was like, I didn't have all those muscles, you know? So I was like, you know, I think now I consider myself sexy. Sexy to me is an attitude, but, you know, you grow into that.
Yeah.
And back then, you know, I didn't know any better. So I was trying, if it wasn't obvious, it was like, oh, I guess I'm not.
I mean, I distinctly remember that time. And I remember Jim's, my college buddy and I were so excited to come out of college to go to work out at Gold's Gym or World Gym.
Yeah.
And it was a very like muscular time frame to be. The more muscular you were, to this day that my college buddy Francisco and I, he wouldn't mind me calling him out on this, still kind of have that like mentality that we're always having to like pick up a weight or whatever. But I know it is what it is. But but I hear what you're saying and the invisibility. And do you think that a lot of that has changed since that period that you were talking about, the invisibility?
I think so, to a certain extent.
And I'm talking about the gay community.
Yeah. No, I think so. San Francisco is still very much a gay white city. I mean, it is what it is. There's definitely a lot more color that is obvious, and these kids want to be seen. So they're, you know, the twinks that are running around and showing out, and it's a different time now. So you have people that, you know, there's always going to be bodies around, because I think it's kind of gay culture to do all of that.
Sure.
But I don't think it's necessary now. Like, I get more attention now, and I get more attention from people 18 to 27, which is weird. But they seem more attracted to the person, and I think it's the confidence you exude. It has nothing. I was
just going to say confidence, Ronnie.
Yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with my physique anymore. You know.
Yeah.
Even though I think I look all right, I'm not like.
I think you look more than all right.
Well, I appreciate that, but I mean, I know who I am.
Yeah.
So now when I walk around like I'm enough, and not question. I don't question anymore whether or not, you know, you think I'm attractive. That doesn't matter so much. I dress for me. You know, I don't walk around. I don't even wear shorts usually. Even if I'm at the beach, I mean, I may put on some swim trunks, but I'm not that sort of person. I put on a pair of linen khakis and a linen shirt, and I just like feeling good. So clothes make me feel good. And I love fashion too. I actually started in fashion before I started dancing. So
okay.
Back to AsiaSF a little bit, you know, what I do.
Well, in the time I have you here, we've got to talk about, you're the director, choreographer of
creative artist,
yeah. Creative director.
Yeah, creative director. I've been doing lighting, and now I've been, you know, I'm upgrade, you know, so I'm wardrobe, lighting, choreography, staging, psychology.
Casting.
Yeah, casting.
Yeah, I mean, psychology. Let me just tell people real quick, of AsiaSF. How many years has AsiaSF been around with the Ladies of Asia transgender community, the restaurant, the quintessential? How many years?
22 years. And I've been there since 6 months after they opened, I came in. So
currently you're in Palm Springs right now, which is the spot of the brand new AsiaSF Palm Springs. We're burning up, and I've got like another.
Clothes, you'll know why.
We can't tell. You look gorgeous. I'm going to use my time wisely here and ask my questions very spot on here, Ronnie. So you are at the spot of, or near, where AsiaSF Palm Springs is about to debut. I know you tried to open up earlier this year, and after COVID, you're opening up, what I understand. But I really just want to ask you, working, because I think it's so important on this show, Tags Podcast. It's generally a show about gay men, gay sexuality, but I think we share an acronym, LGBTQ. And I think it's really amazing when we can really learn about the other letter in our acronym that sometimes we don't really know enough of. And as a Black man, as a Black director, a choreographer working, just can you give us a few words of what's been your experience working with the trans community?
Yeah, it's actually been a learning curve for me, because I came in as a choreographer knowing what I asked of my talent, knowing kind of how I can guide and direct them. And the girls have taught me a lot. Some of it good, some of it bad. Some of it for me is a retraining of their thought, like, you know, how to kind of come into situation. Like, you know, a lot of the girls come in and they're worried about their shoulders, or they're worried that the movement is too masculine, or, you know, or is this, but the only thing they had as an example was the drag queens, you know, as far as performing. Sure. And we are drag queens. So for me.
And you worked with RuPaul in the past.
Yeah, I did. I've done drag before. And I've worked with RuPaul. I've done, you know, shows in drag where I was paid really well to just be a drag, you know, performer. But we don't do drag at AsiaSF. All the girls are transgender. And so it's a different mentality. I treat them, and they are women. So I treat them as women. The things that they worry about are not the same things that cis dancers worry about. you know.
Did you have like an initial moment when you first started working with the community that you were bringing some of your drag back, you know, your work before to the table where they were like, you know, we're not doing drag here, and that you had to check yourself?
Uh,
Or
you know, I actually did not have a big thing on that. I did know that they were worried about the way they were going to be perceived if they performed certain material. I wasn't as worried about that because the material that I was giving them was something that I would have given any girl. So I never thought like that, but to their detriment, they thought I had that mentality. They thought, oh, well, you want us to do it like this. And I was like, no, I want to teach you how to do it like a real woman and not like a drag queen. And I definitely not as a boy. So I'm trying to figure out, I was always trying to figure out how they thought and how they approached everything.
well,
And
and the
then,
one thing I know about you, Ronnie, in the one time you choreographed me, I think the one time for my 40th birthday, is you're really good with working with, you're a professional dancer, a professional director, choreographer. Often, I'm assuming many of these trans performers are not dancers,
yeah,
but they can perform. I know when you worked with me, I'm not a professional dancer, I dance. You really can take somebody and bring so much out of them to make them look the best. And I'm assuming that's how you approach working with this community.
yeah, that is exactly it. I really just approached it with each individual person and working with their strengths and making sure that they were able to come through as the person, not like the next girl, not like this girl, but you know, bringing out their strength. But they have to trust too, and this community is not very forgiving or forthcoming with trust.
Yeah.
So it was really, and again, I want to say this: San Francisco and Palm Springs are like night and day. They're two different performers right now. San Francisco can be, in my words, a little complacent. I don't think they take enough challenges or enough. Um, they don't extend themselves very much. They don't. They're scared to take a chance. They're worried about what the other girl thinks. Palm Springs is totally opposite. These girls have performed before. A lot of them performed in drag shows, and I had to kind of reprogram their thinking with that. But because they had the performance background, they were able to come out and do exactly what I asked them to do. And once they started receiving the accolades that they were getting, they were like, "Wow, this is really work." I mean, it's emotional. It's an amazing.
Celebratory.
It's celebratory. It's all of those things that you cry, you smile, you laugh. It's very warm. You get goosebumps just watching the Palm Springs girls. I mean, they are so good at the material that I've given them and the direction that I've pushed them in. And all the shablams and all the drama and antics, we don't do any of that. That's drag. That's not something that I see a real woman, especially if she's in a $4,000 gown. Why would she so shablam to the floor? It doesn't make any sense. So I treat them as if I'm working with a J-Lo or a Janet or, you know,
Okay, now.
as an artist. I treat them like artists. So
Ronnie, real quick before I let you go, because we got to go.
yeah,
What do you want people, as you're in Palm Springs right now, when can we expect post COVID-19? Are we going to get an opening soon? What tidbits can you tell us?
well, I can't be definite on anything. I'm hoping Palm Springs comes back. We have everything in place to come back. I would love to start doing some, maybe some sort of small like live shows that I can start featuring just so people know AsiaSF is
Yes.
still there. And that way they would be able to tip the girls and or
Yeah.
you know, or donate whatever, because anything would help at this point with, you know, because everybody's kind of out there trying to make it. So I would love to start doing some of those. San Francisco will probably open up. It's being retrofitted right now, so once all that is cleaned up, hopefully we'll get started back in San Francisco and Palm Springs. I am praying because it was such an experience, and there's nothing else like what we did here. And I'm hoping that it's able to come back the same, if not better. We have a pool and cabanas, and I mean, it's amazing. So I'm hoping it comes back because people need to experience it.
You and me both. Ronnie Reddick, I'm such a fan. I love you. You can follow you at Ronnie Redd, Redd, correct, on Instagram. And thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
And keep us posted so that we'll continue to promote when you guys open and everything else.
Yeah, and then if I ever decide to do a podcast, you can come in and help me out.
I would love to.
And next time we'll talk a little more about sex.
I love it.